Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Principles Global Community is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. Today, we have Jamie Sellers with us. Jamie is a licensed clinical social worker who's been exploring and sharing the three principles for about 20 years. The bulk of his work has focused primarily with children and adolescents in an acute psychiatric hospital setting. Over the years, he's attended numerous Sid Banks conferences and received training and guidance from pioneers in the field. He's conducted three principal trainings for numerous service agencies, schools, mental health providers, and at professional conferences. In 2014, he and his brother Brock formed Innate Health Solutions, a company dedicated to sharing the principles in a variety of contexts, such as personal development, school settings, drug rehabilitation centers, and businesses. For the past 4 years, he's been the director of a residential treatment center that serves children struggling with severe emotional and behavioral challenges. Given his background in mental health and social work, Jamie is certain a more fundamental understanding of the three principles can essentially alleviate any level of suffering. He's also an avid Alabama football fan and a part-time professional magician. almost you have to be something that you're not there, Jamie. Sorry about that. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here and to hear what you have to share.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And it's funny, I couldn't be further from a musician. I mean, it's funny how people get those two things mixed up. I'm so far from, I mean, it's my wife's family, they're very musically inclined, but yeah, that's just funny. But no, I probably should have left the magician part out because people might expect that I was going to do something, you know. That works out better in person. So you'll probably just get lame jokes instead. Anyway, yeah, so I'm really happy to be here. I've been a member of 3PGC since it started, and I've been watching these webinars over the years. And I guess recently when Brock and I spoke at the online conference back in February, it sparked the interest of maybe doing one of these. So reached out to Bonnie and we were able to work it out. So as far as like a topic goes, I had been I thought that it was kind of interesting that I just recently came up on my 20th anniversary of discovering the principles, and it's kind of crazy that it's been 20 years. I found I guess I was 8 years old maybe when I'm kidding, but yeah, it's been 20 years, and so I was reflecting on the past 20 years and working in social work and in the psychiatric mental health field, and thought it might be of value to just kind of share my story and share some things I've realized and also I want it to be I want there to be some dialogue too. So I don't want to as much as I like having a forum to speak, I want to get questions or comments or anything, something like that. So yeah, it was it's funny. I my background is in social work. I got my master's from the University of Alabama in 1999, and but it wasn't my career, my profession that led me to the principles. It was actually I found it in my own personal journey of trying to I was somewhat of a seeker, I guess you could say, and I had this thing where the grass was always greener on the other side. I was always needing something to look forward to, and this was really she really showed up in my relationships. I loved the honeymoon phase of a relationship. Then after a period of time, I would wonder if there was something better, and then then I would look back and be like, oh, wait a minute, I missed that again. And so I found myself on this, like the rabbit chasing, I mean, the dog chasing the rabbit on the dog track. Never could quite get there. And I'll never forget, I ran across this book called You Can Be Happy No Matter What. And I was going through a tough time in my relationships. I was struggling a good bit. And I remember reading something in the book about it was about the fact that you're not experiencing the future, you're experiencing thought now in the present. You're not experiencing the past, you're experiencing thought in the present. And now I'm paraphrasing, of course. And it hit me. It just hit me really hard that I was suffering because my mind was getting ahead of itself. And so, so I proceeded to keep in mind, this was in 2000. So at this time in the principals community, there were a lot of books, but they were all, they had, a lot of them had kind of a feel of maybe still had a little bit of a thought management feel to them. And, but around that time, and I don't know all the details of this, but around that time, Sid had from what I was told, there was a conference of some sort, and he had sort of got onto the community about all of the books that were being put out there, and so all that stuff got pulled from the shelves, and so I was coming on board like at that time, and still trying to figure out. I had gotten Slowing Down the Speed of Life and a couple of other books, but I just ended up having to kind of to go on the black market to get some of the materials that were out there, because this I didn't know about Sid yet, right? And so then it wasn't until a couple of years later that I had the thought, I wonder if this would be helpful in my work in my practice at the hospital. I was a therapist on a psych unit there, and it's funny looking back on it because it seems so obvious, but I was really just focusing on myself. I was trying to be more present. I was trying to slow down. I had this reputation, and I still do to an extent. It's gotten a lot better, but I would just get really distracted. And when I was in graduate school, I never smoked cigarettes, but they would go out there to smoke, and I would go out there with them. I would joke that I was a secondhand smoker, and I would hang out and, listen to them talk stories and stuff. And then they would, I would just walk away, like in the middle of a conversation. And I wasn't trying to be rude, but it was just funny. Like I was just so busy minded, And so later, a couple of years later, I started to explore getting more, trying to learn how I could use this in practice. And so from that point, I went on and kind of a journey of learning from different people in the field, and I had some mentoring and some coaching, and looking back just on how it's interesting how our understanding goes in phases. I remember there was a phase that was I was so focused on trying to be present all the time. It was like I was like trying to be mindful all the time. I thought that was the point, And then I realized, wait a minute, hey, that's a lot of work, And then it was like, wait a minute. If you understand, then you just naturally become present. You don't have to do the present. My brother and I used to joke. We'd say, "Man, I can't wait till this weekend we can be present." Like it's gonna be, wow, man, it's gonna be so much fun. We can be present this weekend. So then I later went through a phase where I was trying to help people think better. Let go of their thinking, drop negative thought. I had parents. I would get really still, and I would tell them that it's funny. If you look at a picture of yourself from like 20 years ago and you look at what you were wearing and it's like, golly, what were you thinking? When I think about some of the stuff I try to do with people, I kind of feel the same way, you know. But that's part of the I guess that's part of the evolution, you know. So so I remember a distinct phase though that came around. I guess it was around 2007, something like that, 2008. Um, and it was this phase of realizing that the point wasn't to improve your experience; it was to understand it. That when you understood it, improvement would happen by default, but that wasn't the point. And that was hard to get at first for me. It was kind of hard to get, but I remember that was that moment where I started to realize that, oh, you can. Who cares if you have a bad experience? It's going to pass. It's not even true, you know. You can just feel bad and not and it not be a problem. And so it shifted my focus when I worked with people. Instead of trying to help them with their anxiety or their depression, it shifted to helping them to just see it for what it was and to understand it, and to just and that the paradox is that it tends to lose its grip on us when we understand the truth about it. And so that was a big moment. And then over the years since, oh, let me say this, let me backtrack a little bit. When I first started to get kind of bitten, I you know, if you really get bitten by the principles, it's especially if you're like me and you're kind of a know it all, you know, you want to like change everybody and fix everybody. I showed up at the hospital and went to the psychologist. I had slowing down the speed of light in my hand. This is gonna change everything. I was so I was like gosh, I had to be obnoxious, but anyway, she looked at me like I was crazy because I was trying, and of course at that time there was a lot of talk about the different modes of thought, you know, free flowing mode and processing and all that. But even that was just I was crazy. But I'll tell you one thing that really helped me in terms of just knowing that it was true. I used to do groups on the adult unit at the psychiatric hospital, and um, some of you, if you're watching this later, some of you may have heard the story several times, but I know Brock's heard it a lot. But um, I would, you know, as a magician, I do sleight of hand, and I would, it would be group time. And now keep in mind, this is on a psychiatric unit with people who are currently paranoid and psychotic, people who are anxious, depressed. Some people are detoxing. There would be people that were going to be going to a hearing to determine whether or not they could leave or not. I mean, a lot of them were there against their will. And I would go in and I would say, it's group time. And of course, nobody is that interested. I mean, if you're that interested in group, then you probably don't need to be there. And, but I pull out the cards and I start to do some sleight of hand. And within just a few minutes, they would be laughing, sitting up, engaged. They would make, you know, they would be cutting up. You know, it was like within minutes. If you walked in the room like 10 minutes later, you couldn't tell who the patients were. I mean, I guess technically you could tell because they have scrubs on or whatever, but you couldn't tell that they needed to be there because they would just be, you would see their mental health would come out like within minutes, like without any, you know, it's not like they were trying to it wasn't like they said, oh, let's see if we can enjoy this. They weren't trying to enjoy it. It just naturally would come out. People who were really confused and manic, and they would just, you would find that they would be in this enjoyable state while they were observing it. And now Um, Now, what was interesting about that is that afterwards, I would say, um, or I'd say, well, how are you feeling? Oh, great, and I would say, well, what, why do you, why do you think that is? How is that possible? You know, um, oh, well, it's because you gave us a good break from reality. You gave us a, you know, you gave us a break. And then that's when I would point out that as an actual fact, you're getting in touch with reality. You leave reality when you start thinking about when you're going home and why you're here and how you've been mistreated. You you got in touch with reality, and without any effort, you had all the help, the mental health, the well-being, you had enjoyment, all of that, and without any effort. And seeing that, and see, now I could see it before I was even trying to consciously teach it. And that's one reason why I think the principles resonated with me so strongly, is that I could see, if you look for it, you'll see people's mental health. But if you look for their symptoms, you'll see those too, right? But then again, you'll see it in everybody. So it's like we're all the same. I mean, Sid used to say, we're all schizophrenic, and I would tell them that. I said, look, y'all, there's no difference between you guys and me. The only thing is that my illusions are a little more socially acceptable than yours. You know, yours are a little bit out there, but they're not any less true or more. It's they would. I remember one guy. He said, my problem is I think things I can't prove. And I was like, well, I think that's pretty much all of us, right? And so we had these stories come to mind, but I had a lady one time, and she had cut all of the cords to the TVs, and she had taken all the phones in the house and put them underwater. She had cut. I mean, I'm just thinking about how I would have felt as a family member, if that had happened. But basically, she said, I was so mad, and she truly believed that the TVs and the devices were influencing her. Okay. And she said, but you know what? She goes, I didn't even, at the time, she goes, I didn't think it, I knew it. And I was like, you're right. You're right. Because if you thought it, you might have been like, I probably don't need to cut the cords. But I mean, you're going all in when you cut the cords. That's like, you know what I mean? Like it's not just a thought to you, it's reality. And she said, I'm sitting here and I'm like, that was crazy. That was crazy. Now, and yeah, I had to agree with her. It was crazy to do that. But what had happened was her thinking had gotten so caught up, she had gotten so off track that she truly, like, for whatever reason that was serving her in some way, but it was a huge misunderstanding. And then her realizing that just because you think it and feel it doesn't mean you need to act on it. That was a big shift, And that was, I saw that time and time again with people with quote unquote severe mental illness. Now, of course, when they go back to the treatment team or the doctor or whatever, you would hear things like, oh, I guess the injection's starting to work, or the meds are starting to work. It would get explained away. But I saw firsthand people have. I truly believe that the system could do a better job of teaching teaching them about mental health would could supplement or like, just medications might be helpful to get them in a place where they can listen, but then them learning about their mental health can help to keep that in place rather than focusing on just take your meds. So that was a really good training ground of seeing if you can see people's mental health on a psych unit, then you can see it anywhere, you know. And then several years later, I started doing some aftercare and some training with Gulf Breeze Recovery, and started doing some stuff with them. So I started to see more of the severe cases of people with addictions and substance abuse, and people with, severe, heroin and crack, and all of that, alcohol, and seeing, in the same way that the only real misunderstanding they had was that, it's not okay to feel bad, you know, like that's all they. I've joked with them. I said, really, that's all you need is a rehab center. If you could teach that, hey, it's okay to feel bad, it'll pass. Because I mean, think about it. Well, why did they end up there? They didn't think it was okay, so they would do things to try to avoid feeling bad or to make themselves feel good. So, so I started to see that was a sort of a corollary to the earlier insight about not having to improve your experience. It's like realizing that you can feel bad. That's a game changer. I mean, that's why we don't have psych units for 2 and 3-year-olds, because they understand that. They know it's okay to feel bad. They could care less about. They get so mad, and they're not going to self-help books after they tantrum. You know, I don't know. Some of the parents these days may have started doing that, but that's 2 and 3-year-olds are great examples. So if you can see mental health in people with severe mental illness, and it's right below the surface of their thinking, and you can see mental health in children, that they're born with it, that it's natural, it really gives you a lot of confidence when you're serving people, because you're not, that they're not that far away from where they want to be. They already have what they're looking for. And when you see it in them, they're going to be more likely to see it in themselves. So, so that was the kind of the, and then this last stage, I guess you could say, when 3 or 4 years ago, when I got my job and as a director of a treatment center. So I was at the hospital for like 17 years, working, working in the trenches, and I would try to do trainings. I would try to share the principles in different ways, some disastrous ways. I remember one time I think I memorized a George tape one time and tried to just like recite it for the group. That was funny looking back on it. But anyway, I couldn't do the accent or anything. But anyway, and then, but I had this thing. Well, if I become the boss one day, then we're going to do the principles, and we're going to teach, and learning about being patient with the field in its evolution, learning that there's a lot of people out there doing good work, doing good research, and even though they may be taking the long road around where we're trying to get to, I started having a lot more patience and more compassion with the field itself, and even figuring out ways to navigate the bureaucracy and the wording, how to talk about certain things, diagnosis and all that stuff. And so, but I realized that just because you're the boss, all that means is that people are going to be more polite when they listen to you. It doesn't mean that they're going to accept it. So it's been a work in it's a work in progress as far as all that goes. I would say, I had put in here on my topic about, the service of others and just being of service. And I think, to me, like one of the biggest gifts that the principles point to is the fact that every field, every endeavor, service is really at the essence of it. It's on a universal level. it's not a trait thing. It's not something, you're not born to be someone who likes to serve others. It's you'll find after crises like after 9/11 or after school shootings or natural disasters, you'll see people pull together and all just serving from their heart and not from their ego. And it's so it's just so interesting that we start labeling people as being, depending on what field you're in. I mean, people who are in finance fields, they're serving with their knowledge and understanding of money and all of that. You know, there's just there's a way of serving. I talk about it as heartfelt service instead of headfelt. And headfelt, I've many times fallen in the trap of headfelt service, which is where you're serving for yourself, you're serving from your own ideas and concepts, and you're serving from your theories, your diagnostic labels, instead of serving from that space when you're not. It's like your heart is full and your head is empty, as opposed to your head being full and your heart is empty. And you can be a hardcore social worker or therapist or and be doing it from ego, not realize it, doing it innocently, of course. I think ego story. I think to me, it's the funniest. I think it's funny. My brother and I, we we like sort of mentor each other, And I'm like, man, I'll call him up, and I'm like, man, I need some perspective. I'm running low today. And I said, well, you've called the wrong person. I'm already I'm on E, and but like we call each other out on the ego stuff too, and it's pretty funny. But that's the thing about the when you start looking at the principles of like, oh, we've got the answer and nobody else does, or when you're afraid to read or listen to other people out there who are saying things that are very similar, that's ego too, This truth. I mean, Sid would say this too. It's like nobody is more spiritual than anybody else, and the wise have been saying this since the beginning of time. So it seems pretty clear that you could hear from other people. You could hear truth, So so now at the halfway mark, I'd like to take a second and see if there are any questions or thoughts or anything that strikes you that you want to. I mean, I see that there's not that many people on here, but I don't know, Bonnie, you may have 1,000 people hidden behind on the next page or something. Right? I'm kidding. When we did that talk at the conference, I got cracked up with how people would watch an online conference. I think somebody was out there mowing the lawn while it was on, or people doing dishes. It's always funny. People get really comfortable with the Zoom stuff. So if there isn't anything, obviously I can still riff some more on this.
Hey, Jamie.
Hey,
this is Eric Haney. How you doing today?
Good.
Good. Hey, quick question. How much time do you spend working with your colleagues and helping them to understand the principles versus working with patients? It seems to me that helping others to understand it who are helping people, that seems like a lot of bang for the buck there. And I'm just curious how you approach that.
That's a great question. I really feel like that is really what I want to do. I mean, that's what I feel like the real calling is helping the helpers. you know. I mean, whenever I get a chance to share with other helpers, social workers, counselors, whenever I get a chance to help them, or interns, we have a lot of interns too, and I definitely feel like that's more leveraged than working directly with people. I think working directly with people is great from getting practice on seeing people's wisdom in action and getting grounded enough in it, because if you know, this is something that I struggled with early on, was that I would try to teach above my pay grade, as George would say. You know, I wasn't teaching what I knew. I was teaching really cool things that I heard him say or I read that Sid said, and I wondered why people weren't being impacted, and it was because I was it wasn't true for me, you know. And so when I started, I think having an opportunity to work with people in the trenches, so to speak, I think that can really help, because when you do help helpers, you want to be able to, what they want to know is, okay, what are the kind of things that you've said to people that helped them, or what would you do in a situation like this when someone has this problem? And so I think having that experience has been helpful. Now, that being said, my experience has been that the hardest people to help have been helpers.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, they love their theories. They're so religious about it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have better luck going to like a fundamentalist Baptist church and try to tell them that, you know, questioning Jesus. I mean, because they love their theories, and they get really wedded to them. And so that to me has been has required a little more patience and just a lot of listening and trying to get out of the conceptual part of like the principles or the three principles, or I don't even really talk about it that way anymore, you know. I do in this context, but and I don't know if that's the way to do it or not, because I mean, I certainly want people to get more resources and want to lead them deeper, but I think that it's just that's a challenge. I totally agree with you, Eric, though. That's where, to me, if you get a critical mass number of people that start to get it, you know. And the thing I would say too is that over the years there were people that would hear me talk about things and they would say, I don't know why he keeps saying it's not CBT. It sounds just like CBT. It's cognitive. Why does he keep saying it's not cognitive?
Yeah.
And then it would hit them one day. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. It's not cognitive.
It's not.
And it was obvious to them, but it was hard for them to explain. And so, but I would say too that there was something else I was going to say about that. But yeah, it's a I think there's a difference in finding this for yourself and your own journey, and then finding it as an approach to try to help people better. You know, like let's say you're working somewhere and it's like, hey, we're doing this, and you know, they go to a conference and I mean, I think people get impacted in both arenas, but for me, it just seems like there was a difference in that I was learning it for me personally and then started applying it clinically, as opposed to learning it to apply it.
Right.
I mean, that drives me crazy when people talk about using or they'll talk about, you know, the approach as it's an approach. And it's not. I mean, I'll joke that I've been learning and involved. I've been involved with the principles for 45 years now. You know, really? I'm like, yeah. Well, I was born in 74.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, because I mean, it's true. It's part of the human experience. It's not.
Kind of is the human experience.
It is. That's exactly right. It is the human experience, and it's not. That's the thing. That's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
A challenge because people listen in terms of approaches, and they're thinking, okay, what box can I put this in?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, and that takes patience, because for a long time I'd be like, it's not in a box, and I'd get, and that's not, you know, the point either. Yeah, that's, golly, I could go all day talking about that. That's a challenge, but you know, it seems to me that the times that I wasn't trying to get it across, and I wasn't trying to convince it, and I was just speaking from what made sense, and you know, that people were listening better than when I was rah, you know, principles are the best, you know, we're right and everybody else is wrong, kind of thing. You know. And I had to learn some hard lessons on that. You know, I had some experiences in my development where I got called out on it a little bit about, you know, being a little too ego driven. It wasn't said that way, but I picked up on it, and it really, I thought I knew it. And I remember hearing pioneers in the field say things like, well, I don't even know it. And I'm like, well, crap, if you don't know it, I thought I knew it. And then they would talk about how Sid would say he didn't know it. And then they'd be like, what? You know? Yeah. So that was hard to get, because I thought I knew it. And that was realizing that it was not intellectual. Yeah. You know, that was a tough pill to swallow for someone who liked to analyze things.
Yeah, I've been struck by the difference between teaching and sharing, because I find when I try to teach, man, I go right up into the head, and then nothing comes across right. It even doesn't make any sense to me, let alone those folks. Whereas if you kind of share the experience and work with them, it just seems to sink in so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my brother and I had that realization. We were prepping for a talk we were going to do, and we had spoke to one of our mentors, Dick and Bettinger, and he was, and it occurred to me that when I'm talking with my brother, I'm not trying to teach him anything. I'm just sharing. So I'd say, hey, let me tell you about this and that was the difference than when I was teaching. You know, like this. Here are the top three. You know, this is the three things that are this, and so, but I still fall in the teacher trap all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
It's easy to do.
Yeah, when people expect it too.
Yeah,
like they're wanting that. So when you're like, that's the worst part, is that they're like, teach me, you know, and you can just take that bait and run with it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's funny. You learn more from your mistakes in this, you know, too. Same way with magic. Some of my favorite stories are when I bombed, you know. But you know, I would say this too. I would say that a big realization was just realizing that there's just no end to the learning. There's no end to it, and you don't just get it and then you've got it now. I mean, every day. I mean, I get lost in it, lost in the illusion every day, get caught up. But you know, it seems like over time you find yourself getting back on. Yeah, you fall off, but you can get back on quicker than you did the day before. You know, I know in my, you know, early on in my relationship with with my wife, and we were dating, I would get self-righteous and preachy about thought, and you know, it's all just thought, you know, it's all just an illusion. You know, then it would be like, I'd get upset about something, or I'd get insecure. I thought it was all just thought. What do you, don't you know? And I would be like, it's still true. It would just, anyway, it was, it's funny. But, you know, that's part of the learning. Yes.
Rachel has her hand raised.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Hold on. I think I was trying to. Okay.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, I wanted to be on camera. Hi,
Hi.
to meet you. Hi, Bonnie. So nice to meet you. And I have a question. I just said, like what you just said was just so beautiful is that you see it when you see it and you keep on seeing more and more. That has been my experience, especially over the last few, 2 weeks. And one of my clients is I'm a coach, and one of my clients came back with like I said something, and she's like, "You made me feel this way." Now this is a person that has been, coaching with me for like a while. Has been in 12 steps for years. Is a yogi. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is so rich. I so would have loved to be able to make other people feel a certain way, because I sure have a big list of people I want them to feel a certain way about me. And if
Yeah.
only I had that power, I mean, like this, I just started laughing about it, because I was like, to me, it was funny. I was like, really? Oh, wow. Do I wish I had that capability? But then what what I got to see is that that person is as most likely like a narcissistic tendency or personality and wants to stay in the victim mode. And of course I want to get the snapper out of it. I want to help her. I'm like, enough already. You've played this game long enough. You've suffered long enough. Get out of it already. Let's, 2 slaps on the, 2 slaps on the wrist and just wake up. And I know I can't. So I wondered of like your experience with people that, clearly on one end, like they have the two things. I know that he's a very bright person that sees it for everybody else, but when it comes to themselves, they're not willing to see it for their experience.
Hmm. Yes. I have found that it is easier to work with someone who's in denial about there's like they could be in some kind of denial about the situation, minimizing it or whatever, than trying to help someone realize they're okay. Like to me, that I would get more frustrated with someone who I can see that they're okay, but they don't see it, than someone who thinks they're okay, right? And you're like, well, you really need to be looking at this, right? And
Maybe not.
yeah, and I mean, it's again, it's a you being able to stay out of that power struggle. You as the helper, the practitioner, not like you said, taking it one way or the other. Like it'd be great to have that kind of power, right? If I was able to make you feel that good or that bad, man, I'd get in another field, because I could go into politics or something if I could have that power. But but I mean,
It would make real money.
yeah, really, exactly. But I'll say this too. It's like there's something of the perspective though that you just don't know. Like I've had situations where I thought the session was terrible and it was contentious and they got upset, and then like a week later it hits them and they call me and they go, I hear what I just now realized what you were saying. And then I've had some where I thought I walked away going, I'm pretty good. That was good. And they were so good at saying what the therapist wanted to hear that I just got roped in. So, there's just a perspective about, you're just playing a small role in this person's journey, and it may just be a small chip away at something that it gets chipped away later with something else. I think just having some perspective about it keep a sense of humor about it is great. I love that you're laughing about it. That's another thing the principles allow us to do, is have a sense of humor about things. I mean, I think that, like, those awkward moments, and I think it's hilarious when stuff like that happens. And so now you want to be sensitive. Like I know one time, because I tend to be lighthearted in when I'm working with people. And I've had situations where I needed to be a little more attuned to where they were, because my lightheartedness was mistaken for being dismissive and not validating. I had that happen with a girl that she had depression. She was actually transgender and was in the hospital, and she was like 18. And what was really interesting to me was that she was not bothered one bit about the transgender part. She was like, oh yeah. She goes, I live in the South. I know I'm gonna move to California when I'm an adult. Like, that wasn't even why she was depressed. Okay. That was a sidebar. But I remember she thought I was saying that she wasn't depressed. But I wasn't saying that. But when I was talking about depression and about our experience being illusory and all, she thought I was saying it wasn't real. And I wasn't saying that, but I wasn't validating it. And so I've had situations where I may have laughed at something a client said, or I found it funny, and they took offense to it. And so, it is helpful to be present enough to know that, okay, this joke isn't going to land with this person. I need to just, but I would say for the most part, people appreciate the lightheartedness. I think that's refreshing, to not be serious and like, yeah, this is really tough. Let's, to commiserate with them. That's not necessary. And most people find it refreshing, in my experience. So I would say, keeping that perspective and continue to listen and be curious about it, be puzzled about it. I'm curious. I'm trying to understand. It's almost like you want to feel bad. Like, do you want to? I don't think you want to feel bad. You just kind of get curious about it, but and then realize that some people just may not be ready yet, and they just need more time.
Yeah, I mean, I felt after the last session that I'm done. I failed this person. If after such a long time she's still like saying what she's saying, I'm a failure. I'm not. She needs to find somebody else, because what am I doing here? I don't want to just make her money. It's not fair.
Yeah. Oh man. See, if you take credit for when they're doing bad, you're going to take credit for when they're doing good, and that's just as dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, I've had so many that oh wow, I changed that person's life, and then a week later they're worse off. So, and I even tell clients too, you don't want to take credit for when you're doing well either, because it's not you. Be grateful. But if you take credit for when I had a guy that I saw in the hospital, and he got hit really hard. I did a group, and something I said just really hit him. He was one of those situations where it just hit him really hard, and he wanted to see me outpatient. And so I saw him for a while, and he was doing great. And people used to avoid him because he was so negative, but now they were reaching out to him. They were like, "You're like a different. What happened to you?" And then he had a bad day, and people have bad days.
Yeah.
He thought he was letting everybody down. I was so, now he thought he let me down. And I said, man, did you think that was you that did all that change? Because if you think it was you, you're going to feel like that's a lot of pressure, And so that was a good learning moment, is to just, so yeah, you never fail them, and you never do right by them either. I'm just be grateful that we're able to have an opportunity to, as Sid would say, tap them on the shoulder to help maybe wake them up. That's what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And, sometimes they wake up and they're, and then sometimes they don't wake up and you have to just move on.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Did that
Thank
answer
you.
your question, or did you?
I'm sorry.
Did that answer your question, or did you have anything
Yes,
else?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. More than that. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Cool.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.
Same here. Bye.
If I was going to share my failed stories, we'd be on here we could do a 24. We could do, if you want, Bonnie, we could do a 72-hour straight of failed stories of failed clients. Like I've got a lot more testimonials of my failed, of the clients that are worse off. I'm kidding. But I always think those stories are funny because they just point out how we can take ourselves too seriously, and you know what, I would say this too, if you can keep that perspective, you can, you really can put your heart into helping someone. If you think that your well-being is on the line when you're seeing someone, then you're going to be playing it safe all the time. Or you may not want to call them back because you're like, I don't know, what if I don't help them? Then I'm going to feel bad. And so being able to just seeing it with perspective that it's not about you, and that frees you up. You're playing with the house's money when you're able to do that, and that's something that's really helpful, and really helpful when it comes to not getting burned out. People get burned out when they don't think they're helping enough. And the principles have definitely made me burnout proof. Do I get stressed? Yes. Do I have moments where I'm questioning my, career choice? Of course I do, but it's never that long. I'm back on track,
Anyone else before we wrap up? Jamie, is there anything you would like to say to close us out?
Vera, were you about to say something, or did you just? I didn't want to put pressure on you to say something. Does it look like, it looks like someone's about to say something? And
I just wanted to say thank you, really. To me, it boils down to just being really present with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess seeing whatever, the good in you and the good in the other, and then trust the moment or something.
Mm-hmm.
And in the field that you're working in with people with God knows what diagnosis, it's easy not to see them like that, but it felt like really just kind-hearted, light-hearted presence goes such a long way.
Yes, that's the thing, is that the principles have made it, to me, really simplified. And just to close out, I can take us home now, but the simplicity of it, you don't have to get into all those details. It's really simple. It's fun because you just don't know what's going to come up in the sessions. You don't know. There's like a discovery part of it that's fun. It's not hard work, It's not a hard work kind of thing. It can be really enjoyable. And then the service part of it, I think, is just really interesting when you really start to think about being of service, and not just as a helper, but just in anything. It doesn't matter if you're a parent or if you're an engineer. You know, an engineer is in service because they're trying to solve problems or trying to you know, construct things in a way that are going to make life easier for people, or police officers and fire department, you know, people in the fire department are concerned with safety, you know, being safe. They're serving people, but there's all service is like it's such a much more universal term. And the heart of Sid's message, I think, was just really getting grounded in that presence so that you can be of service to others and get out of your own way, you know, and not take yourself too seriously when you do get in your own way. That's because you know that's going to happen. That's for sure. Yeah. Early on, I used to, I thought that, oh, I got it now. I'll never feel bad again. So if it's just, I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's so simple, right? It's all thought and it's all illusion. And all you gotta do is just be present and everything will be great. Yeah, you know, I don't know if life, I think life is not designed to work that way. And that was a good lesson to learn. That it's not sustainable, but it is a lot, there's a lot more to learn, I can say that. So if that ever changes for me, if I ever get to the point to where I don't have bad days, then I'll do another webinar on it and let that be the topic. How about that? Anyways, I really appreciate you guys joining me, and if you, I'm on the 3PGC site too. So if anybody wants to reach out and chat or talk to me about it, whatever, ask questions, feel free. I really appreciate Bonnie putting these together and coordinating these. I mean, they're so consistent. I just love it. You know, like there's no fall off. It's like a well-oiled machine. It's great.
That's
and,
my
I still do what?
That's my service.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's right. And going back, I mean, gosh, there's so many I haven't gotten to go back and watch yet. I have like a queue of so many that, you know, one day I'll just binge them one weekend, you know, overdose on 3P stuff.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you wanted to say?
I really, really enjoyed listening to what you had to share, Jamie. I just want to tell you that I loved how you share your grounding in such a down to earth way. Like, I can see why you would really touch so many of the adolescents that you work with. It's really a beautiful way of being. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, and I
appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know the next one is July 8th, and it's with Erica Bugby. So hopefully you can all join us live then. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jamie.
All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yeah.